What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Camper Report and the Long John podcast. It's a joint stream today. If you guys haven't already, go check out Joseph Kamperman's podcast, the Long John podcast, and his Twitter as well. Actually, I forgot to put your Instagram in the description, but I will. I could actually do that very soon. I could do that after I'm done with this intro. But the link to his Twitter and his YouTube are in the description. Promote yourself a little bit, Joseph, and kind of tell them what you do. You do pretty similar to this channel, but kind of tell them where they can find you. And then, I'm excited to talk football. There's a lot to talk about. And guys, no Niners. I'll probably try to get some Niners content out there maybe tonight. So stay tuned for that. We'll be talking NFL today. So how are you doing today? And promote yourself a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I know we threw it together. I got on here sort of last minute, and I appreciate you having me. Again, I'm Joseph Kamperman, host of the Long John podcast. I've had this podcast for almost about a little over 6 months now. Started in March. Then, of course, sort of took a 7-week hiatus, and I'm starting to get back into it. And then, of course, I'm going to take another 2-week hiatus. I just moved. So the last stream I actually did was actually with you back in July. I've got to upload that stream still. I've been moving. It was actually like the process of moving. So you guys can find me on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at the Long John Podcast, as well as on TikTok and Twitter. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at the Long John Podcast, as well as Twitter or X now at the Long John.
Nobody calls it X.
No one calls it X. And you can also find me on the new Instagram version of X, which they call now Threads at the Long John podcast as well. So find me a little bit of everywhere. I'm on as many social media platforms as possible. Again, I do try to update those things, but I have taken a hiatus. So this is actually sort of my welcome back moment for me. So I appreciate you having me. I'm doing well. And you can check out, I know, especially during the height of the season, I focused on basketball pretty heavily. And then, of course, I took a convenient 6-week hiatus during the first part and all of training camp, as well as the first part of the season. So I'm appreciate you bringing me on the show, and I'm excited to get these topics kicked off.
Yeah. And when I'm talking, if you want to quickly send me or even drop in the description, because you should be able to do it yourself, your Instagram too. So if you want to do that. But guys, thanks I didn't actually get to post this right. Like I came back from cross country and then I didn't really get to post it. I've just posted the stream now. So for you guys who are loyal supporters who are already in here, thank you, because I didn't even post it. So obviously you guys have my notification bell on, and that's the only way you know that this is live right now. So thanks for the support. Carcast is already in here. Yo, I need to have you on. I think my voice just cracked. I need to have you on, but we'll figure out a day. I'll hit you up on Twitter. And then 49ers throwback. I don't know if I've ever seen you in the chat. So thanks for coming in. By the way, guys, I got the new drip. It's Purdy time right here, plus the new hat. I think you guys have seen that. So going to be a good Niners season. But let's not quickly. Let's get into the NFL topics. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. And the first one we have to get to is the hype real surrounding the Cowboys this season, and what are some concerns you still have? We've gone at length about these two, about the Cowboys. And my thing is like their defense is so dominant that the offense really hasn't had to do much. Their offensive line health is still, in my opinion, a concern. I believe they've actually been struggling with that a little bit. And I don't know. I think later on in the season, when the defense most likely will maybe take a step down because of, as the season goes along, teams start to get more film and start to maybe figure out some of the weaknesses that the Cowboys do have. As that goes along, I think the Cowboys, especially closer to the playoffs, the Cowboys are going to have to rely a little bit more on their offense to make some plays. And that's where I kind of get concerned, because can the Cowboys offense do that? I don't know. Dak is the same Dak that the thing that I don't get is, like, why does everyone say, Dak is back, the Cowboys are so good, Dak 10 top 10 quarterback, he's a Super Bowl quarter, like that's what ESPN has been saying. But Dak hasn't turned a corner. It's the same head coach. Dak is far past the point where he can actually develop anymore. It is the same Dak Prescott. I just don't get it. I really don't get it. So this is probably going to be a very biased opinion on both of our sides, but what's your thought on this?
Well, it's easy for me to come at it from a biased standpoint. Dak's a great guy. Can't stand the dude because he plays for the Cowboys. From a quality standpoint, they've got a good leader, in my opinion. They've got a guy that's going to lead the team. The problem with Dak that I have is, I'm a big Kirk Cousins hater. If anybody dislikes Kirk Cousins, it's this guy right here. Kirk's also a great guy, but in the world of sports, we don't play for great guys. It's what are you doing on the field? And Kirk Cousins has had arguably better stats than Dak Prescott, yet gets all this hate. And then Dak Prescott, it's like the moment he, they were in and, dominated the last 2 weeks. And all of a sudden this is a Cowboys Super Bowl team. And I honestly, I've seen this many times. The Cowboys have had many options, many teams that I have thought were Super Bowl caliber, and I'm not going to deny that. But then it gets to the playoff season, and whether it's coaching, whether it's Dak, whether it's injuries, they all accumulate, and the Cowboys have not performed in the month of January. And as an Eagles fan, I'm happy they haven't made it to the month of February. And so, but one of my biggest things is in week 1, there was a lot of hate towards Dak because he only completed 54% of his passes and he only threw 24 passes. Well, he came back in week 2 in a dome at home, and he threw 31 to 38, and what many people thought was potentially one of his best NFL games. I can't say that I doubt that, because I do believe, when Sauce Gardner was guarding CeeDee Lamb, he really didn't target him, but he did a good job of they really were in control of this game from start to finish. Now, the question is, am I concerned? Yeah, absolutely. Zach Martin and their guard, I have it here, Chuma Edoga, or however you say it, last name. Zach Martin left with a left ankle injury, didn't return. I've not exactly gotten an update yet on that. It sounds like he probably could have played if it was a tight game. And Edoga was replaced by TJ Bass just before the start of the second half. It looks like Edoga's injury could be worse, but he was starting for the injured guard Tyler Smith, who missed his second consecutive game. They do have a banged up O-line. My biggest question for them is I think it's people are forgetting between the Eagles and the Cowboys. I'm not going to play Mr. Nice Guy. Their schedules are brutal. The Cowboys have a section of their schedule where it's Niners, Chargers, Rams, and Eagles. 3 of those 4 teams are very, very difficult. And honestly, even the Rams, I think, will make it more difficult than people think, especially.
I think the Rams are even more challenging than the Chargers, in my opinion.
Potentially. But I mean, you've got 2 of 4 teams that are playoff caliber teams. And I would honestly, after the injury to Aaron Rodgers, I would now throw Chargers back in the playoff mix. Even though I know they always have been, but I had them missing the playoffs in earlier shows. And then, of course, then they have another section where it's Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions. That's 4 really tough teams. And I will say the biggest thing that I would like to say is, it's funny because I've got a bunch of Cowboys fans who are like, we have played people, the Giants were a good team, the Jets were a good team. And I'm going to tell you right now, both of those teams are capable of winning games. And I'm not going to sit here, but I had to laugh when the narrative of you haven't played anybody was used on the Cowboys. As an Eagles fan, I heard that all year last year. Now, the truth is, we ended up going to the Super Bowl and had arguably one of the most entertaining Super Bowls for a loss. Now, if it was gut-wrenching, it's hard for me to get over it. What I would say for this is circle that Niners matchup. I don't care if the Cowboys go into it and lose, because I do view the Niners as a top 2 team in the NFC. I view
top 2.
Top 2.
They're number 1, baby.
I'm debatable on that. I goes back to their quarterback situation, but Purdy has looked good. My biggest thing is this: I view the Cowboys as the 3rd best team in the NFC. Right now, I sort of have the Eagles and 49ers as neck and neck. I'm not really entirely sure from a talent standpoint if you can separate them at all. I think the one difference is I would take Hurts over Purdy right now. The Cowboys, my concern is coaching. I am not a big Mark McCarthy fan. I think that regardless of what we want to say, it's hard to even compare his time in Green Bay because he had arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time in Aaron Rodgers. I really just think, I don't know. I have a problem with the head coach calling plays. I was really happy when Nick Sirianni gave it up, even though their play calling has been suspect the last 2 weeks, sorry. The real question is the hype surrounding the Cowboys season? No, I don't believe I think it's real, but can they produce when it's mattered? And I am concerned about their January predictions and the fact that, honestly, 8 of those games are really tough in the 8 teams that I just mentioned.
Right.
They play 2 division, and that's not even counting the Commanders, who are a stingy team, who I think are going to be sneaky, not good, but just sneaky stingy. I mean, they're coached well most of the time. These are 8 games that I'm throwing out there that are not even
and
their schedule. These are 8 really tough matchups.
The Commanders, I mean, Chase Young looked finally good last game. Sam Howell starting to take that step. They're kind of starting to lean on the run game. The only problem is where I think the Cowboys have a mismatch is the Commanders' offensive line is atrocious.
And their defensive backs. I know they've got Emmanuel. What's
Forbes
from
Forbes?
I think but I am concerned about their defense. The biggest thing is it's divisional matchups, and the NFC East is a good division, contrary to what people believe.
Right.
I mean, 3 of those teams are 2-0, and one of those teams is 1-1, and I probably should be 0-2. But to answer this, just sort of finalize at least my opinion on this number one question is, I'm not all in on the Cowboys hat because I'm concerned about the coaching, and I think it's a justified concern. However, I would be an idiot if I told you that the Cowboys were not going to be a top team in the NFC. If they're not a top team in the NFC, then I will look back at this show and say, no, it's arguably one of the biggest failures, because from a talent standpoint, they are probably as talented as they've been in the last 15 years. Now, there was what was it? Oh, I'm going to get the year wrong. I don't know why 2015 is sticking out to me. I don't think it's 2015, but that the year their defense was scary good, with Jalen Smith, and I'm trying to think, and they were very, very good. Their defense was exceptional, and I thought they really had a chance. Remember, they went 15-1, and then they lost.
I think I do remember that.
So, am I going to say it's the best team in the last 2 decades? I don't know if I'm willing to say that yet. We are 2 weeks into the season, but I will say let's circle that Niners matchup. That's a big matchup that's happening in a couple of weeks. I want to see exactly what's going on with that matchup before I give an opinion on is the hype real, because I think a couple of weeks into the season, it would be fair of me to give an assumption. They're a talented team. We saw 2 polar opposites with Dak. We saw the 54% Dak who only completed 24 passes, and we saw a 31 for 38 Dak who had a couple of passing touchdowns and played relatively well against what I do believe is a decent Jets defense. However, if you're always playing from under the gun, like the Jets are more than likely going to be this season, is that really a justified win? And I will say, if it's you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to know that game and look at it from an unbiased opinion and say the Cowboys were absolutely
go ahead.
The Cowboys were absolutely capable of scoring 50 points. The Jets defense kept this team in, but had they had even remotely a guy who was willing to,
they also had no run game either. I mean, you look at, I think Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook combined had 8 carries.
Well, and I'm about to,
I mean,
later on in the show,
that's terrible. Like 8 carries combined is, like, obviously, like I said, terrible. But I mean, you have to give the Cowboys their props, right? Because Micah Parsons right now showing everyone that he is the defensive player of the year. They got Mozzie Smith. He's looked good. They obviously got the addition of Stephon Gilmore,
which he got.
Debatable, really improved.
Well, their defense. No one's going to look at.
You're talking about injuries though, and that's because Brandon Cooks
Yep.
He's a vet as well, and he returned to practice. But later on in the year, guys like Gilmore, Brandon Cooks, Martin, how healthy are they going to stay? But you could make that same argument about the Niners too. And that's
And I will
why
say,
it's only week 2. So we don't know.
it is only week 2, and I will say one thing that I'm going to give Cowboys props for. I thought the Mozzie Smith addition was a little, I don't know. I wasn't entirely for. I probably would have traded out of the first round and picked him.
I think they made that move to stop the Eagles and Niners from running all over them.
No,
So,
exactly. They saw how dominant both of those teams were from a running standpoint in the playoffs, and they said, look, the only way of stopping this is if we solidify our line. But I'll tell you this right now, Mozzie Smith's never going to get the props. But let me tell you right now that I do believe that defensive line is going to not get the love because of how dominant Micah Parsons is. Just remember about how impressive it is when you have a defensive line that can take the pressure off to where Micah Parsons is not getting double teams and they can use him strategically. It's just Mozzie Smith could be a very good pick for this team just because of the pressure he's taking off of the rest of that D-line. So that's sort of my opinion on it. 2 weeks into the season, the Cowboys have some positives. I am a little bit worried about that O-line. And when they play a team like the Eagles, like the 49ers with stacked defensive lines, how are they going to hold up?
Right. Let's move on, though. And guys, if you're watching on Twitter, I greatly appreciate it if you could come over to YouTube and hop in the comments, give us your questions. I'm close to 500. I want to be posting more content to get to that 500. So go check it out. And if you haven't already, go check out the Long John podcast with, I think Joseph dropped the Instagram in the comments, and then, YouTube and Twitter are there as well. His YouTube and Twitter at the Long John podcast. So Nick Chubb, I don't even want to show the video because I looked up on YouTube of his injury, kind of the replay, because I didn't watch that game. And then I heard about the horrible injury that ensued. I have a few thoughts. First thing, if you watch that in full game speed, terrible hit by my gosh, what's his name? The safety.
Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Terrible hit. You watch it in full speed, and Nick Chubb is going to the ground, and Minkah Fitzpatrick just comes flying in and just takes out his knee. And that sort of thing kind of happens in the NFL. The 49ers are a very physical team. But I mean, I think that should have been flagged. I know it's a part of the game, but the way he just came flying in and just took out his knees was gruesome. And I mean, the guy's knee literally, like, imagine your knee locked out, right? And then imagine, like, instead of it going 90 degrees in a normal way your knee is supposed to go, imagine it going the other way. That's what apparently a lot of people are saying. This is one of the worst knee injuries that, a running back can have, and he might not even play again. First thing, it's bad for the NFL because he was an exciting player. It kept the Browns relevant. Now I don't think the Browns are relevant. Deshaun Watson, I was like, if he can get back to the level he was at when he left the NFL for a little while because of all those allegations, the Browns are going to be an insane team. But he looks slower. His mental looks completely, he doesn't look like the same quarterback he was.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of ways with Nick Chubb, and you can go a lot of places with Nick Chubb as your running back. Now it's like Jerome Ford is good, but how far will they go? The offensive line already has injury concerns. Their defense, their cornerback, the top cornerback. I mean, their cornerback situation isn't great. I know that the top cornerback, his name is escaping me at the time, but at this time, but he's not. I looked at his PFF grade, and he's like a mid-grade corner. So, I mean, that team has a few spots on it where it's like, I don't know, I'm concerned. And now with Deshaun Watson not looking the same he has, and Nick Chubb obviously getting injured, that just adds to the concern. But my question to you is, what does the Browns offense look like now? And I need to change that. Was the NFL never mind. And were the NFL teams right not to pay running backs? Because I think a lot of NFL GMs were like, this is what could happen if we pay our running back. Let's say we would have paid Nick Chubb $20 million and he just gets injured. So were they right to hold off on
Well,
paying running backs.
first of all, I mean, it's a gruesome injury, and my heart goes out to Nick Chubb because he's been such a consistent player. Unfortunately, I believe it's also on the reconstructed knee from his injury back in college days.
Yeah. And
Um,
guess who injured him back then? It was Emmanuel Mosley. I
really?
never knew that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
found that out because I was watching the replay of
Okay.
his
Wow.
injury back in college, and it was like, and Emmanuel Mosley goes for the tackle and brings him down. And then
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah,
So, I mean, the
yeah.
biggest thing that's difficult with this is, of course, my heart goes out to him because he's a really phenomenal player, good guy. He's been really one of the positives in that offense the last couple of years through a lot of
Mhm.
ups and downs. Um, the biggest thing with the Browns is their identity is running, and I think that's not going to change because I'm not entirely sure they are truly. It's really weird. The Browns are one of those teams where, on paper, I just don't see them being a threat. But because of the fact that, I mean, let's just be honest here, they scheme well for running backs. Jerome Ford is not going to be a Nick Chubb, and he can't be, and
Mhm.
he shouldn't be compared. But the combination, and they signed Kareem Hunt today, the
Mhm.
combination of Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford, I do think it's going to produce. Now, will it produce Nick Chubb type levels? Probably not. But the RB position is so physical that it's really tough just say we're going to pay you $20 million when we know how many carries you're getting and we know how physical the position is and we know the longevity of a running back. And that's why I don't be surprised if you see running backs take these 1-year high deals and then sort of, try to cash in maybe a couple of times on these 1-year deals, whereas a 3, 4, even 5-year deal is almost out of the question if you're looking at a $80 million guaranteed contract because no team is going to want to pay you that guaranteed money if the longevity of a running back is
Mhm.
only 3 years or not even guaranteed. I will say he's been one of the healthiest running backs in the NFL over his span in the NFL. So, this is a freak accident. And of course, it's an awful situation. What I don't like to see on the flip side is teams like the Colts, who I genuinely, out of spite, believe they put JT on the PUP list. And JT's now out for the first 4 weeks when he probably wasn't going to be out for the first 4 weeks. I know he had some issues, but it sounds like they were basically playing the, well, you want to get traded? Well, sucks to be you. And speaking of traded running backs, right before we hopped on the show, it's announced that Cam Akers has been traded to the Minnesota Vikings. And
Interesting.
so Cam Akers and Alexander
That makes
Madison now.
sense though.
It does because Alexander Madison just hasn't been good the last 2 weeks. Um,
What was the price?
I'm looking because so much news has been happening.
Really?
Well, yeah, like the Bears facility got raided by the Bears coach stepped down. His house got raided by the FBI. We don't know exactly why. So there's been a few
Wait, really? I thought it was their offensive coordinator.
um
It was
the defensive coordinator, Alex
defensive coordinator.
Williams.
Yeah, that's what I thought because I saw that too. I saw that too.
He's resigned because he's taking care of his family and his health, is what he said. But there was another report saying the FBI may have raided their home. I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, and there was allegations. I saw that, but I didn't. It was not Eberflus. I knew that.
No. But with that being said, the Rams traded Cam. That was a really big random sidetrack. But the
Yeah.
Rams traded a 2026 seventh round pick to the Vikings in exchange for a 2026 sixth round pick. So 2 years from now, they're going
Nothing.
to cash in on these picks and they're trading Cam Akers. And ultimately, I think it really was just becoming a distraction. And I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you right now, if it works out for Cam Akers, he goes behind a team that really does like to run the ball. I think it's a good situation for Cam Akers. And ultimately, the Rams get rid of a guy who I really think is actually very talented. He goes to, I really honestly at this point, he goes to compete with Alexander Madison. But these are very physical positions. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, look at the Eagles. The Eagles are a good example. And trust me, it drives Eagles fans mad. But we got rid of Miles Sanders and we replaced him with 3 running backs that make his salary in Carolina. And I'm going to be honest with you, Miles Sanders is a very talented receiver, running back. But I believe between Swift, Gainwell, Boston Scott, and Rashad Penny, I don't know. I can't tell you right now with a confidence of mind that they're going to have less production than Miles Sanders. Maybe not individual, but as a whole. And so it's tough because running backs want to be treated equally, and I'm for that. But they're probably the most physical position in the NFL. They get, if you're a bell cow running back, you get 25 carries a game. I mean, you're getting in the multiple hundreds of carries per season. there's no way your knees and your body can hold up with the amount of hits they're taking. And they don't get protections. Remember, receivers get protections when they're held before catching the ball, which it could affect, mobility and stuff. They get protection when they are tripped. Whereas, okay, running backs get protection maybe when they're tripped, but if someone grabs onto a jersey, as long as it's not a horse collar, running backs don't get many protections that other other
Right.
positions get. It's a physical group. So to answer the question, were the NFL teams right not to pay running backs? Well, it's tough because truth is Nick Chubb was the heart and soul of that Browns offense, but not every running back is. I'm going to be honest. Jonathan Taylor was one of the best running backs in the NFL and was a heart and soul of the Colts offense. And I'll be honest with you, Zach Moss has looked not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Let the action speak for yourself. If the team can't run the ball to save their lives, maybe you were one of their valuable players.
Right.
Until then, if I were Jonathan Taylor, I mean, I guess, are you trying to reset the market? There's one person in particular I think could potentially reset the market, and that's Bijan Robinson right now, just because of how talented he's looked the first 2 weeks. But here's the deal: even with him, look what happened with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah,
First,
that's true.
really beneficial, and now the dude's not being able to stay healthy. And I know it's unfair but look at Saquon.
Well, and here's the thing:
Saquon Barkley. If you compare Daniel Jones' stats with and without Saquon Barkley, night and day difference. So to say that the NFL teams were not right to pay the running backs, in the case of the Giants, I'd say look at your team. The stats prove that without a running back like Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones is a different QB. So I think it's a case-by-case scenario. For the Giants and the Cowboys, I'd say yes, they should pay the running backs. For some teams like the Eagles, so far, I'm not entirely sure if we're feeling the Miles Sanders departure as much as I paid me to say that.
And here's the thing that's a little unfair to the running backs. I mean, yes, they don't stay healthy, but if you look at a lot of times and this is a grievance that a lot of 49ers fans have with Kyle Shanahan, but I look around now and I'm like, this is what a lot of coaches do. When a coaches get a toy that is very elite, like a player that is very elite or a toy that they can use that is very elite, they tend to overuse him, especially if their team needs to win.
Yep.
Stefanski, I mean, he might be out of a job in the next few years, if not this next year.
Yep.
Because I guarantee you he was the one advocating for Deshaun Watson. And now that he's not working out, what does Stefanski have for his name? So he might be out of the door and fired. But my point is a lot of these, and so he needed Nick Chubb. He needed him because they needed to win a lot of games. They needed to win now. They needed to make the playoffs. They needed to show some progression, right? Same thing with Kyle Shanahan and Christian McCaffrey. It's like a lot of grievance that the 49ers have against Kyle Shanahan is don't use him so much, right? And I feel like a lot of head coaches do that is when they get something, a guy that's very elite, they tend to overuse him and get him injured. So in the running back side of things, it's like, yes, we don't have very much of a shelf life, but the reason why we don't have a shelf life is because these coaches in part are not being fair to us because they're using us too much. And in that way, we're susceptible to more injuries. That's where I think the position that Bijan is in right now is perfect. It's probably not going to last forever, but that's where I think the NFL teams are slightly wrong because they definitely are sometimes overusing running backs. You see it with Christian McCaffrey. You saw it with Nick Chubb. When Austin Eckler is on the field, you see it with him. It's just, yeah.
And no matter the rules, that position is not getting less physical. I mean, they're going to get, and the biggest thing is the lifespan of a running back is 3 years, unless you're Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Let's just be realistic. The dude's a freak of nature, but unless you're Derrick Henry.
But even
he's
not as the leader.
But I mean, I don't be surprised if, the Eagles format, the 49ers have used 2 running backs. It looks like Algier and Bijan Robinson. Don't be surprised if that becomes even more so important because of how physical that position is. You want 2 running backs because now it looks like even for the Browns, Jerome Ford looks like he's coming on, and now you've got Hunt and Jerome Ford. And I'll be brutally honest with you, not the worst. They're just in a
Yeah.
really tough conference, and let alone a tough division where really all 4 of those teams could be vying for a playoff spot. So that's sort of my opinion on it.
Yeah.
It's payment is a really tough one. I'm waiting for someone to reset the market. I'm going to be honest. If Josh Jacobs can't reset the market after the year he had, I don't know how you could. But then look at what Josh Jacobs has done the last 2 weeks. Not a whole lot. And this Raiders
Yeah,
team.
but that also could be because of Jimmy Garoppolo and his limitations to throw
Exactly.
downfield.
So
He's
it's
probably
so
dealing with a lot more heavy boxes
yeah.
in the
And Daniel Jones is a good example. I'll use him
yeah.
as an example. You guys go back, look at the stats. Stats don't lie. Daniel Jones with Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones without. It is night and day difference. So for the Giants, you'd be a fool to lose him, just being
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
The Eagles, not so much.
Yeah. Moving on. Which team out of these undefeated teams is faking? There's 9 undefeated teams after week 2. Did I cut you off before?
No, nope.
Okay. Yeah, just making sure. Don't want to do that.
There
But
you go.
there's 9 undefeated teams left in the NFL, and it includes the Eagles, Niners, Cowboys, Saints, Falcons, Bucks, Commanders, Dolphins, and Ravens. It's crazy that we're sitting here and 3 NFC South teams are undefeated. But we'll start with, I guess we could start with the Eagles. I'm gonna go ahead and obviously say this is obvious. They're contenders. I think that they've had their struggles, but the 49ers did that too the last 2 years. I'm not super concerned. If we're sitting here and saying week 12, you know, the Eagles are not great. They still haven't figured out the run game. I really want to. I mean, they obviously kind of figured it out a little bit against the Vikings, but the Vikings don't have a very good defense. My concern with them is like your guys' linebackers. I mean, just your defense didn't look the greatest. I mean, your defensive line was dominant, like they should have been, but like their cornerbacks, Darius Slay, I don't think is the same cornerback as he used to be. He against the Vikings, I mean, was getting. I guess it's Justin Jefferson. He was kind of, I don't know. And then your
Still,
backup cornerback. Well, the other thing is like depth. Like Bradbury didn't play against the Vikings, and your backup cornerback number 28 got absolutely cooked on a frying pan. So
it's
that's a concern. And then running backs. If Swift, really the thing with him is injuries. So if you can balance that out, don't use him like you did on Thursday night as much. So
yeah.
those are my concerns, kind of.
With the Eagles, I'll be quick on it because, of course, I could keep
Yeah.
speaking to Eagles. I will say the one thing about the Eagles, and it's going to go back into the final topic. So, but with that being
Yeah.
said, my concern with the Eagles is right now, their defense was missing starting safety, starting corner, starting slot corner, and starting linebacker. So 4 of
Yeah,
11
right.
starters were out. 3 of those are hopefully coming back. The linebacker situation has always been an issue for the Eagles. Last year, the Eagles scored. I was very high on TJ Edwards. He was a great running linebacker for them. That he came up sort of through their ranks and was very good for a couple of years. Then he signed a massive contract this year with the Bears. Nakobe Dean was supposed to take that spot, and Nakobe Dean's now on injured reserve, I believe, probably for at least a minimum of 4 weeks, if not longer. So the earliest he's coming back is week 6. Because he was put on injured reserve last week. Avonte Maddox is out for the year. More than likely, it's a torn pec. I've not gotten an official notice of it, but their slot corner is now out. And so now they're bringing in slot corners. It's a concern. The one thing with the Eagles is that D-line is still very deep, very much intact. And I will tell you this right now. During our Super Bowl run in 2018, our defensive line masked Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills. Both of those guys were never great cornerbacks, but they were made to look a lot better. And so to go back to your answer about Darius Slay, he was at one point for a large portion of the game was the only starting corner. And he was one of 4 other starters that were out. That he was the only one in. Besides him and Tremaine Edmonds, we were missing 3 other starters. So he was having to deal with not just covering Justin Jefferson, but with a rookie safety above him.
Yeah, that's true.
Corner. So I can't really throw him much under the bus because, truth be told, in week 2 of last year, because of Bradbury, where we play zone quite a bit. There was, it's hard to know. I haven't looked at the exact stats. Yes, he didn't look as good as he normally would be. I will say, hopefully, we get those defensive players back. My concern with them is really going to be the concern that I'll share with the Cowboys, and I'll just tell you that is just strength of schedule. They're both of the Eagles and the Cowboys rank in the top 5 in the rank of strength of schedule. They have some brutal dates. And I would say those are my concerns with them. Injuries for both of them, injuries along the Cowboys line and injuries along the Eagles defense. But for me, it's okay. Can you win the big games? For the Eagles, some games that stand out to me is the Bills, the Chiefs, and the 49ers. Of course, along with the Cowboys games. Can you win some of those big games? And look, yeah, remaining to be told, but we'll go on to the next one.
Niners. I will say that the deep ball on Brock Purdy is a little bit concerning. He missed 3 or 4 with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy missed 3 or 4 like passes past, I think it was 20 yards, 25 yards past that area. Missed all 4 of them, or 3 of them. But Kyle Shanahan has the confidence in Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, we got to remember, has only started 9 games now, 8, 9, maybe 8 to 10 games now. And he's going to get better at that deep ball. He really is. I think, yes, he doesn't have the arm strength, but he's going to continue to work on that accuracy. It's still super early in the season. And for right now, he's close to elite on every single other level. He doesn't get flustered like Jimmy Garoppolo does. He's a good scrambler, good game manager. He's going to get slightly, I think, better at the deep ball. I mean, he's, like I said, Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't good at the deep ball his whole entire career, and he started games, and he never improved with the 49ers. Brock Purdy will improve. I know that. So Niners, I think their quarterback situation is going to look better and better as the year goes on because he's going to continue to get better. He's only a second-year player, and I mean, man, the Niners are contenders all the way. That should be no. Now, I do want to see the right tackle get better, but yeah, that's another story. So
that's my biggest thing for them is O-line. That right tackle situation, I really think is going to get exposed. The question is how much of Brock Purdy's injury is affecting his deep ball throwing. I'm not sure.
Well, that's the other thing. He's going to continue to heal. So
yeah, well, potentially, unless he's continuing to sort of nag at that arm. Being that he's not been on the injury report, I believe, I would say maybe it is healed. Maybe he's fully healed. Maybe some people just aren't good deep ball throwers. I mean, one thing about the Eagles is Jalen Hurts is a really good deep ball thrower, but even Jalen Hurts in year 3 as a starter, even him, there was one deep ball in particular, which would have resulted in a touchdown. He just didn't step into the play potentially. And that led to it just being a jump ball, which Devontae Smith caught, but still. And so with that being said, for the 49ers, their schedule is a lot easier than the other two. That's one of the reasons why I have them as top 2 in the NFC this year on top of their talent. I'm not worried about talent 49ers. There's no discussion. This is a legit team. Whether they're going to make it far in the playoffs, I think really speaks to what their coaching does to protect their quarterback. You and I have talked about this before. I think Kyle Shanahan has got to recognize the weaknesses he has when you're facing guys like the Cowboys and the Eagles, which they will face both of those guys in the season. How are they going to block those edge rushers on that right side where there's a weak? Because last year, that was the reason why they were having issues, especially in the playoffs, regardless of what anyone wants to say. He's got to make sure he addresses that, whether that's a chip block, whether that's giving Purdy time to make the reads he needs. Because I'll tell you what, if Micah Parsons lights up on that right tackle side, you better hope that you have, some protection on that front. So that'll be my 49ers.
Cowboys, I think we've already gone over this. So contenders, we went over this at the beginning of the show. Saints, this is interesting. To me, I'd say Chris Olave is an encouragement, but now with Jamal Williams going out, they're going to get Alvin Kamara next week. But part of me is like their offense in the playoffs or even like close to the end of the year, they're not a very good offensive team. Well, I'm just saying that their coach is a little bit weak offensively. Their defense is actually really good, but I don't know. You mix Derek Carr, who I think is a decent quarterback, with not a great offensive play caller in their head coach. I just don't know how far they can make it with that. I'm going to say they definitely have a really good chance to make the playoffs. I actually have them making the playoffs, but are they a contender? Not necessarily. They might even. I would say that the farthest their ceiling right now is a second round in the playoffs. The divisional round. That is their ceiling. I don't think they're a contender, but I don't know if you could call that faking or not, because I still think they're a great team when they get Alvin Kamara back. So, but it will take for him a few weeks to ramp up.
So they have a good defense in a way. I mean, Lattimore has been stellar to start the season. The biggest thing with the Saints that worry me is that they have a very easy schedule. So I think one of the things that I have on my notes is here's divisional matchups will be key. And I know that sounds oxymoron because they are, but I mean that in all seriousness, because 3 of those teams in the divisions are now 2-0. And that, look, regardless of what we want to say about statistics, I don't follow the whole, if you start 0-2, you have this much of a percentage. But what I will say right now is for the Saints, I could see, I mean, ultimately they could literally be a 9-8 team. But if 5 of those games are divisional wins, they're probably making the playoffs, just because I don't think that division really had their ceiling. I don't think is like a 12-win ceiling. I think a lot of those teams are probably, if they're lucky, are going to win 11 games. And I think that'll get you a playoff spot and probably won't get you, well, I don't know. The NFC North is concerning, but probably is not going to get you a third round, but it may get you a fourth seed instead of a third seed. But are the Saints faking it? I'm going to say no because of Derek Carr, because he's still a veteran quarterback. They have a good run coming on in Alvin Kamara in 2 weeks. They've got a good receiver in Olave. They've got a good receiving core in Thomas Olave and
Rashid Shaheed.
And then their defense is pretty good. They've got some people, Cam Jordan, Marcus Lattimore, a few guys on that team that I think this team is not going to be something that's going to go to the championship round, but I think they'll make it difficult for the team that's visiting them on the road.
Yeah. Falcons, another one of those teams where they looked a little interesting in the first half of that game. They made a comeback. They barely beat the Panthers. That's a divisional game, so I don't know how much stock you want to put into that. Their offense looks great. A big part coming into this year, I was talking to a few people. You really don't think it's not great? I mean, you have Bijan. Really?
Well, go ahead.
They've scored 20-plus points both games, and they scored over 20 points against the Green Bay Packers. I just think that going into this year, a lot of the question mark was how good is that head coach for the Falcons? And he seems like he's creative and doing stuff with Desmond Ridder. Me personally, from what I've watched of Desmond Ridder, I'm not that impressed with him. So what are your thoughts on this? I'm going to say pretenders for now, but that team is looking so talented. If Bijan Robinson stays healthy the whole year, they're going to the playoffs. So I'm going to say pretenders for now, but I mean, for how easy their schedule is, I don't think they're pretenders. But
I go back to
this is hard.
This is tough. Pretenders for me, no doubt about it. And the reason why is because of quarterback situation.
Right.
The reason why I would say the Saints have an edge.
But can't you work around that? That's my thing.
You can, but this is where I'd argue is if I had to pick 2 teams, I'd pick the Saints. And it's not because I think the Saints are better. It's because I have more faith in Derek Carr than I do in Desmond Ridder. He's going to have to grow into the passing role. He's got 2 good receiving options in London and Pitts. But until they officially allow him to, or he makes the step on hitting them and actually feeding them the ball, I liken this team in a way because they do have a good O-line to very similar to the year where Jalen Hurts was just starting off, where they ran the hell out of the ball, and then they meet the Bucs in the playoffs, and the Bucs stopped them from running the ball, and all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts, because of the lack of receiving options and because he essentially was a rookie, even though he wasn't, didn't look like he did last year. And I sort of likened that to Ridder. Now, the difference between Ridder is, good gosh, I would kill to have London and Pitts as receiving options. They're both really talented. The question is Arthur Smith going to scheme them into the game? Because right now it looks really like majority of runs. And I think that's because they're trying to sort of ease Ridder into the starter role, even though he played games last year. I'm going to call them pretenders just because I'm not sold on them being a team that can actually go in, like it or not about the Packers. I don't entirely know if that Packers team would have lost if they would have had a run like Aaron
Well, and
Jones.
also that's the thing. I'm looking now, and they didn't even have Aaron Jones. They didn't have Christian Watson. So how good was that offense
I'm
really?
going to say
So I
pretenders.
will say contenders. I will say contenders.
Contenders.
I'm sorry, pretenders. Pretenders.
Yeah.
Sorry, pretenders for now. And I don't know. I think Arthur Smith is looking creative, but he gave Bijan Robinson 19 carries. That's not going to be sustainable. Plus, Bijan Robinson had work in the passing game as well. It's just you're going to eventually during the season going to have to find more creative ways before it's too late, before Bijan gets injured, because I don't want to wish it upon him, but eventually he probably will if he continues to get the type of work that he
It's
is.
physical for sure. Yep.
The Bucks, I'm going to say pretenders because they played the Vikings. I mean, not a great team, and then they beat up upon the Bears, who I thought was going to be really good, and then Justin Fields is like not really a good passer at all. And I'm actually glad that Kyle Shanahan, we were all saying, why didn't you just draft Justin Fields? I'm so glad that Kyle Shanahan did not draft Justin Fields. He, to me, is looking way worse than I expected him to be. And I'm going to say contenders for the Bucks for sure. I just, Baker Mayfield, that offense has not looked good. And Baker Mayfield is just, I don't think he can lead a playoff team, even though he did lead the Browns that one year. But other than that, I don't know.
Yeah.
They haven't looked promising. So
he's landed in a good situation with the Bucks because of the talent they do have on O-line with Godwin and on offense with Godwin and Mike Evans. The biggest thing I will say is this Chicago. I actually feel for Justin Fields because I don't like Luke Getsy's, I believe is his name, or their coordinator. I just don't feel like they're really helping Justin Fields. It's sort of like, here, Justin Fields, your quarterback, figure this crap out. With Baker Mayfield, I feel like it's the opposite. They really are helping him. The biggest thing is all three of these teams we just discussed have easy schedules. They do face the Eagles, Bills, Niners, and Lions. I really think it's going to come down to all of these. If they can ace their divisions, they've got a playoff team. But I don't see, even though three of these teams are all in the same division and they're all 2-0, I only see still, in my opinion, one of them representing their division in the playoffs. Because I think the second team is going to come from NFC East. Second team is going to come from NFC West. And then it leaves one more team. And I would almost argue that there's a chance that a third team is coming from the NFC East, if not from the NFC, a second team from the NFC North, in like the Vikings and the Lions. I just don't see. I know the Vikings are 0-2. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see the Vikings finishing as a worse record than the Bucks, the Panthers, and maybe even the Saints. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the Falcons. Like, I don't see a second team. So for me, if you're the Bucks, your only option, in my opinion, right now is winning the division. And I think that's really tough because I still put them third, if not fourth, on the totem pole. And I can't believe I'm saying I'd put the Panthers ahead of the Bucks. But
that's where we disagree. I think the Panthers, Frank Reich hasn't looked good with Bryce Young so far. And
2 weeks into the rookie quarterback.
But the receivers
is an issue for sure.
And then
their defense is very good still.
I don't know.
I'm not sold on the Panthers.
I would put them third.
I had them as a playoff team.
The NFC, I know you did. We did those predictions, and I was like, Joseph, what are you doing? I mean, this is a rebuilding team.
I still think
the NFC, at the beginning of the year, the NFC seemed like kind of weak, but now it's seeming very stacked. Like, we might like all of these teams, Bucks, Panthers, Falcons, Saints, but one of those teams or even two of those teams are going to miss the playoffs and are going to maybe have 7-8 wins. So they can all be good. But the Commanders, this is another team, easier schedule. They played the Cardinals, barely beat them. And then last week they played the Broncos, and that really they almost shouldn't have even won that game. I will say that I think they need to try to get Jahan Dotson a little bit more involved in the red zone because he does not have a single touchdown, and he was one of their main red zone targets last year. Through 2 games has only had like 9 targets or something like that. It's impressive what they're doing with the run game and how they're utilizing it, and
Yeah.
they're trying to make it as easy as possible because they know they don't have a good offensive line. Sam Howell, though, is looking good because they're running the ball effectively.
Yeah.
But I just feel like when they face a team that can actually stop the run, they're going to have to drop back, and their offensive line is so atrocious. I'm going to say pretender for now, because I just don't know how long you can rely on the run game to carry this offense. So, but Chase Young has looked good for the first time in a few years. So, on the defense event.
Yeah, I'm going to go with pretenders on this too, and it really just goes back to the last 3 teams. It's a QB situation for this. I think Howell's good, but you've got 7 teams of the 16 teams make the playoffs. I don't believe Howell is going to be one of those. I'm going to be honest with you. I had the Giants as a potential team. They've not looked good. They're 1-1. The win against the Cardinals. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. If you're down 20-7 against a team that I really thought potentially,
28-7.
28-7, you're down 21 points to a team that I know some of those were freak points, but the bottom line is I just don't see the Commanders finishing with a higher schedule than the Giants. And they're 2-0. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's
really
just 2-0. Yeah. Oh, I think the Giants will
with Saquon Barkley now out for the next 2-3 weeks.
But the question you have to ask yourself is: are we seriously considering the Commanders as a 10-win team here? I don't know. I don't see that. I know they're 2
no,
weeks.
probably not.
But they are 2-0.
I don't think the Giants are either.
They're winning the games they're supposed to win, whether we like it or not. Arizona and Denver were 2 games they needed to win, and they beat them.
I just think that the Giants are like, if you compare them to the Giants, this is a major rabbit hole, and we should probably, because we need to get moving. But the Giants, man, they brought in some pieces, but none of the pieces that they brought in were elite. And they said, this is our offense. We're going to give you 5 subpar receivers or average receivers. And then we're going to put Darren Waller super injury prone, and we're going to rely on Saquon Barkley to have an amazing year. And that's what's happened. The Giants just took a lot of risks, and they've all been not panning out. So.
And I'm not saying they will. I'm saying I still view the Giants as a better team than the Commanders. But it could be that Howell proves me wrong. Great, proves me wrong. Maybe they vie for a third playoff. But the biggest thing with the Commanders is they have got to finish with a better schedule than people like the Lions, the Vikings, the Bucks. I don't know. That 7th seed is going to be the most coveted seed. We saw it last year. It's not going to change. I think seeds 1 through 5 are relatively guaranteed, but seeds 6 and 7th, both very hard teams. Because 1 through 4, I think we sort of have an idea. That 15th, I would say, 15 is probably reserved for Cowboys or Eagles, and that 16 is probably reserved for the Seahawks or the 49ers, whichever finishes better. And I would say then that 7th seed was okay, fine. Okay, all the rest of the teams vie for it. I could be wrong here, but that's my opinion. We can move on.
Yeah, and I obviously you have to get it for work, so let's I guess try to speed these up a little bit more if you're because hey, he's a busy man. That's why he hasn't been making shows.
7 a.m. until 5:30 now, and I've been doing 12-hour days the last 2 days. So
yeah,
getting ready for a trip.
I feel for you, man. I have to get up.
Come live. Maybe I will do a brief live video from Ireland. I am traveling there next week, so maybe
Hey, fill us in.
Oh, yeah.
Dolphins, I'm going to go ahead and say contenders. The Dolphins have looked very flexible from both areas. They can go passing it a lot. Tua, if he can stay healthy, is a top 10 quarterback. And they can also run the ball. Now, their running back position, I don't know how. Raheem Mostert, how long he's going to stay healthy for. They could be a team at the deadline looking to make a trade, or even for Jonathan Taylor. If the Colts
play,
the Dolphins, I think it's stupid to think, oh, we're going to rely on us, guys in the running back room who last year those guys got injured, and now we're going to rely on them again this year to cover our running back room. So
Yeah, I
For
think it's
now, I'd say contenders, but the Dolphins need to do something about their running backs if they're going to stay in this position. So,
I agree, fully agree. They played the Chargers and the Pats, and they even though they both were close games, they have a really tough schedule. They pay the Bills twice, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Eagles. They also played the Jets twice, but it now looks
yeah.
like both of those games are probably going to be relatively easier. I will say this for the Dolphins. I do share the concern, but the rich typically get richer. And if I'm the Dolphins and I'm sitting there week 6, right before the trade deadline, and I'm saying, okay, how can we get richer? Give up a flipping second round pick, get Jonathan Taylor, do
Yeah,
what
the
you need
Niners
to do.
did it for Christian McCaffrey. He
Exactly,
saved
and
their
look
whole
what he would
entire
do.
season.
Now,
And
if
he is one of the most
yeah,
generational running backs of this
yeah,
generation, and you get him for a second round pick? Are you
yeah,
kidding me?
exactly. Yeah,
And
and so
JT
for
hasn't even
me,
had injury issues. Well, not really, but yeah.
well, and the biggest thing for me is if you're the Dolphins in Tua shown no sign of injury and you're week 6, hell yeah, go out and get him. Spend that second round pick because the truth is you are the best team in that division right now, in my view. Better than the Bills. The Jets are no longer relevant.
Yeah.
Chiefs are looking shaky. Like the Dolphins have a chance to get number 1 seed if they can keep going down this route. Yes, further that. And, even if Tua misses a game or two with injury, if you can build up enough wins, you may need to coast into that game without even having to worry
Mhm.
about it. But yes, I concern is running backs. Other than that, they've looked really good, but they've been tight games. The Chargers and the Pats have both been in it. The New England has both been in these games. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely contenders all the way.
Okay. So Ravens now, this is the last team in our undefeated team, and then we'll quickly get to week 1 matchups. That should be fun. Stick around for that. We could rapid fire that. But Ravens, I'll say this is surprising to me. I think they're a playoff team, but do I think they're contenders or fakes? I don't think they're fakes, but I also don't think they're contenders because the injuries that they're already starting to see.
Yeah, it's concerning.
I don't know. But Zay Flowers, really impressive. He was my
Mhm.
number one wide receiver coming out of the draft. I loved what he did. And I had him going first off the board. He didn't go first off the board, but he absolutely should have gotten first off the board. That's really impressive. But I mean, the injuries are already starting to hit him. Like I said, I'm going to say they're going to be like another first or second round exit. They're not going to stay healthy the whole season.
I'm worried about that. Odell Beckham's injured. Lamar Jackson's dealing with his own stuff.
J.K. Dobbins, obviously.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins. Lamar Jackson did not look good. They
I
could
think they
also be
also lost Patrick Queen or one of their offensive linemen, something like that.
Patrick Queen's a linebacker, but yeah, I'm not sure about the O-line. I
Well,
would say that
yeah,
um,
both.
they do concern me because Lamar did not look
I
good
think
in
they lost Linderbaum.
good
I
gosh.
can check. I can check.
Yeah, check that. Well, I say this. So Lamar did not look good in week 1. He bounced back in week 2 and had a really good week against a good team in the whether we want to argue it or not. The Bengals are a good team. They have a mid-range schedule. My biggest thing with the Ravens is the injury issue. They could be a sneaky team to go in
Yeah,
there and
Linderbaum.
the season.
I don't know for how long, but I knew. And then they also Justice Hill, I think, is questionable as well.
Yeah,
Their
running backs.
second
They
running
can
back.
never. They need to just stop using running backs because apparently they can't keep them healthy. And my heart goes out. J.K. Dobbins
Yeah,
is
Linderbaum's week to week. So
okay. Well, the bottom line is this: they're dealing with injuries. They're also in a really physical division. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Bengals and the Browns. None of these teams jump out to me as a guy that's going to challenge
yeah,
some of the better teams. Like right now, I take the Jaguars over all of these teams, not over the Bengals, just because of the talent and Joe Burrow. I think it be my best benefit. They need to just. I know they're 0-2. I'm worried about Joe Burrow's calf injury because I
right.
think that they probably, honestly, I laughed and I said, "Who's laughing now?" They could have sat Joe Burrow for the first 2 weeks of the season, and that calf would have healed even more. But they rushed him in, and now he's got a
Mhm.
lingering calf problem. And now I'm like, okay, well, when is he going to get a break? So,
Yeah.
Ravens, yeah, I'm not going to say they're not pretenders. They're not contenders for deep playoff runs, in my view. But I'm going to call them contenders in the fact that I do expect them to be in the playoffs.
It is a broad question. I might have done a better job at wording that question because, like, fakes could be missing the playoffs.
No,
So,
I think
uh,
3 of the 9 teams, Bucks,
or-
Commanders, and Falcons, and maybe even throw in the Saints as well. None of those teams I see as teams that are really going to make the playoffs and make
yeah,
noise. But playoffs, season starts new. Anything can happen.
Mhm.
Depth, coaching are the two biggest things for me in the playoffs that show up. If you don't have depth and if you don't have good coaching, typically those are the reasons why you leads to you with losing bad games. The Eagles happen to have really good coaching depth, and they did well. Same with the Chiefs. Depth, and experience and coaching. Those three, but really those depth and coaching are huge. And I know that's sort of oxymoron because that's always the case, but it's later on in those months when injuries set in, when you have to be really strategic with, okay, I have a backup corner. How am I going to utilize him to the best of my abilities? I know his weaknesses. Some coaches will just throw them out to the flipping wolves and expect them to produce, but depth in
Mhm.
the later parts of the year typically has to be combated with good coaching to help mask some of the issues. And I know that's another rabbit trail, but that's my
Right.
pick. Yeah.
Rapid fire picking the biggest games of the week.
So
We'll start with Saints versus Packers. Um, I believe this is an 11 o'clock game. I actually should probably pull that up now because I had the whole slate here in front of me. Here, I'll pull it up. That is yes. Yes, it is an 11 o'clock game. I'm gonna say here, I'm gonna say Packers get it done. Jordan Love has looked super impressive. And I Christian Watson, I'm pretty sure is well, hold on. No. I don't think he's coming back, but I do think they will have AJ Dillon back, not AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones back from what I read. So I'm gonna say Packers here. I think their defense is just too good. What are your and it's also at Lambeau.
it's at Lambeau. I'm still going Derek Carr. I'm not sold on Derek Carr, but I think that I like what I've seen from him the last couple of weeks. I'm gonna go Saints barely over the Packers because I like what the defense could do for a mobile quarterback. And I also think that Marcus Lattimore is playing really good. I'm going to go Saints 27-24, really close game. I could even see it being like a 27-26 type of game.
Yeah. Falcons versus Lions. This I was looking at this slate of games in the NFL is like there's not like a ton of good ones, but this is one where like the Lions looking to get back, 2-1. Falcons continuing wanting to continue their streak. I'm gonna say this is in Lions Stadium. I'm gonna say Lions here. I just think that they need to bounce back from that Seahawks week, which was so weird.
Yeah.
And then you also, their offense has looked very good. And I just don't think like the thing with the Lions is can you get pressure on Jared Goff?
Yep.
I just don't think they can. The Falcons don't
Middle
have that
line.
type of pass rush. Jared Goff, when he's able to just sit back and dice up defenses, it's where he's at his best. Yes, they're missing David Montgomery, but I still think with Craig Reynolds and with Jahmyr Gibbs, I think the Lions get this one done because I think offensively, that's what the Falcons have going for them. The Lions can match that offensively.
Yep.
The Falcons faced a Green Bay team that really didn't have a great offensive unit. So I'm going to say Lions here 30-20. I think they're going to win big. So
Yeah, I'm going to go with a team that's really well coached and has a QB that I think is underrated. I mean, he almost broke the streak for the longest amount of passes without an interception week. He did get intercepted, so that streak is now over. Ritter has attempted 50 passes in 2 games. I really think
yeah,
that the way the Falcons are going to use this, similar to a Baker Mayfield situation with the Browns years ago, where if they can limit it to under 25 passes and win games, they're 2-0. They're going to do that. He had 31 passes, I believe, or 32 passes last week. I don't think he's going to go over 30. Because of that, I'm picking the Lions, and I'm picking 21. I'm picking this really big. I could be wrong. I just think that the Lions can beat you in the air and the run game, and they've got a
well,
good line.
the other key, real quick before we move on, you have Aiden Hutchinson,
Yeah,
and Caleb McGarry, who, although I like him, not a great pass blocker. Aiden Hutchinson
he's been very good this year.
has been very good. I knew he was going to do this. He's my guy, Michigan #1 overall pick. Knew he was going to do it. And when you trust Desmond Ritter versus a good
Yeah,
Lions defensive line, the Lions defense has gotten a lot better. That's another reason why.
yep,
Patriots
I agree.
versus Jets, though. This one I'm going to say Patriots.
Yep,
The Patriots defense is top 5 right now.
yep,
I don't
definitely.
think, from what I've watched with them, I don't think their team is as bad as I thought it would be. They have Ramador Stevenson, who looks good as always. And then they also have, Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry, who had a pretty decent game last week as well. I just think that Mac Jones isn't like my favorite, but Zach Wilson isn't either. And I think this is, again, a week that he gets exposed. I think it's going to be close earlier on, but I think the Patriots, this is going to be a very boring game. The Patriots squeak by here 20-17.
So I'm going New England here as well. I don't like Zach Wilson. I think he's matured a lot, but New England has been in both of the games that they've lost. So while they are 0-2, weather depending, I think I like New England. Their run game also as well better. Even though they're having injuries on O-line and they're having some stuff that they have to shift around, they really have been in both of these games against two good teams in the Dolphins and the Eagles. It's not their fault that they're facing two teams that literally could be in the Super Bowl this year. Two good teams, and they've been in those games. I'm actually going to go here, and I'm going to make a really bold statement. 12-15. There's not going to be a touchdown.
Wow. Okay.
Here. I mean, let me just put it this way. Both of these teams have a hard time generating offense. They both have really good defense. They scored. Yeah, that's just my opinion. I think both of these teams have really good defenses, and I could literally see this being one of the most annoying games.
Yeah.
Especially if the weather gets bad and they start playing in rain.
That's true. It's at Jets. Yeah.
You never know. Both of those stadiums tend to have weird weather. If it's like raining, like I said, I literally can see this game coming down to like who scores the most field goals. But that's my opinion. I'm going 12-15. I'm going New England winning.
By the way, if you guys want to watch this show afterwards, I'll be splitting up some clips, and then I'll also be doing show chapters, hopefully. And guys, if you haven't already, go subscribe to the Long John podcast before we get to this last matchup in the description. Eagles versus Buccaneers. I'm going to say this is easy one. It's at Buccaneers, but I'm just going to say Eagles. To me, the defensive line is too good. I think they're going to get pressure on Baker Mayfield often and early. I could see the Buccaneers actually kind of giving you guys problems. Like I said, the receivers are underrated. You're forgetting that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were really good a few years ago.
And they still are.
And so now I could see them giving you guys problems on defense. I just don't know how good down the stretch the Buccaneers are going to be. I think the Eagles can incorporate. They have more talent. It's an issue. It's the thing to me is like fourth quarter, who has more talent? Who has the wheels to go the distance? You guys can control the ball with the running game. You can pass it with A.J. Brown. I just really worry about how the Bucs can do down the stretch. I'm going to say Eagles, but it's close. I'm going to say Eagles 31-23. Okay. And they squeak it out in the fourth quarter. I don't think the Bucs are going to score much in the fourth quarter, but I think the first half is going to be one hell of a game. This is at Buccaneers once again. So,
yeah, I think the Eagles defense is going to expose Mayfield as long as they can get back their starters. They are missing Bradbury, their starting corner, the Nakobe Dean, their starting linebacker, Blankenship, their starting safety, and Maddox, their starting defender. We know they're not getting back Maddox or Dean. It looks like Bradbury and Blankenship are slated to play, but all of these guys have an integral part in stopping a very good receiving core, especially Bradbury and Maddox. And now we're losing one of those guys, and Blankenship also comes down and plays.
Yeah, Godwin is going to cook.
I think they're both going to do well, and I'm actually going to say this right now, and I know I'm going to hear it from the media. We're going to hear it. I'm going to go 30-23. I'm going to go. I think this is going to be I'm going to go. I think this is, or even, no, sorry. I had 30-24 in my mind. I think this is going to be an under touchdown game. And I think what's going to happen is the Eagles are going to win 3 games, and people are going to say, well, you haven't beaten anyone. The bottom line is, it's not that I don't doubt that the Eagles can't win. I think they will. But I think that the issue is this offense is really benefiting Mayfield. It's the run game that I think that what's going to happen is, I think that the Buccaneers probably will come back in the game maybe a little bit. Maybe it sits at like 30-20 for a while,
right?
30 to maybe 13. But I think that ultimately, and it wouldn't sit at 30-20, but you get the gist. I think the Eagles run game is going to be what controls this. The Eagles defensive line against their O-line, I have no doubt is going to cook. my biggest thing is if Baker Mayfield gets rid of the ball quickly and we are still missing some of those starters, I think this is going to be a little bit different, especially if Bradbury doesn't play. If Bradbury and Maddox both don't play, and that would be pretty concerning because Bradbury would be almost it would be 12 days removed from a concussion. So if he's not playing, it means the concussion's pretty bad. Yeah, and we're also missing Gainwell on offense, but it looks like we're getting him back. So yeah, I'm going to go 30-24 here. Yep, that's my opinion.
Well, guys, it's been a fun show. We've
Yeah.
gone over an hour. Thanks for giving us your time, Joseph.
Yeah.
Again, promote yourself one more time.
Yep.
Tell them where they can find you on Instagram, on YouTube. I mean, Twitter, you're not on as much, but Instagram and YouTube for sure. So go tell them that.
Yeah, so I'm getting back into the swing of things after taking a hiatus. I'm going to really start hitting it towards the middle of October when I get back from my vacation. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok at the Long John Podcast, as well as on Twitter and on or X. I'm on Twitter at the Long John Pod. You can also find me on Threads at the Long John Podcast. I really work YouTube a lot and Instagram. Those are the two that I sort of try to work as most, but typically I try to spread all my stuff out there. You can also find me on Apple, which I did not initially put at the beginning of the stream. You can find me on Apple and Spotify. Most of these shows end up migrating their way there. So please do check them out. I am going to get that one back up on those live streams. Most of the time you can find them on YouTube before you can find them on those two. So yeah, check me out. And thanks again for having me. This has been really fun, been a good hour and 11 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I was just looking because I'll copy and paste because I did see the Instagram. If you want to go check out his Instagram, it's in the live chat. I will copy and paste it into the description. Guys, it's been a lot of fun. Although we didn't have many comments, we did have people watching this stream. So drop your comments later, maybe after the video. Who's gonna win these week 3 matchups?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Guys, it's been a lot of fun. Go have a good rest of your evening. Niners Giants tomorrow. I might be dropping a video tonight, kind of breaking that game down. So go check that out, and then posting these videos later on, as I said, clips from this live stream. So good night, everyone. Go Niners. And I guess in this case, you can say go Eagles, although I will bark.
Yeah, let's go Birds. Thanks.